This year, I went to the end of the world. Inspired by a song, I decided to visit the land of the ficus trees and flamingos, where life goes on to the rhythm of tango. And just like in the song, they invited me to the first class. They offered me champagne. I just loved my champagne in Buenos Aires. I landed in Buenos Aires after over a 9-hour flight from Miami. It's a gigantic city with old and new architecture. My hotel was in the city center, close to the Atlantic coast. This area is filled with skyscrapers. There is no place for them in the older part of the city. We have here the Atlantic Ocean to the east and Old Buenos Aires to the west. A replica of the Lion of San Marcos was donated to Buenos Aires by the Italian government. Italian holidays and festivals are celebrated in this area. And this is a small bronze monument dedicated to the taxi drivers of Buenos Aires. In this area, these modern residential buildings are mixed with hotels and the offices. This is Casa Rosada, the Pink House. It's a presidential palace, similar in functionality to the White House in Washington. In 1595, Governor Fernando de Zarate built a fortress with a moat and a drawbridge here. The building we see here today was completed in 1886. Guided tours are not offered, so we will not be able to see the inside of the building. However, I found some photos on the internet. Take a look. This monument in front of the palace is surrounded by a glass barrier. The stones behind the glass bear the names of people who did not survive COVID-19. Buenos Aires has a good network of public transport, subways and buses. I took the subway, Subte, from Plaza de Mayo in front of the presidential palace to the Congress Square, named after the actual Argentine Congress located here. In a park nearby, there is a giant ficus tree called Gomero. When we think ficus, we usually think of a small woody plant with fleshy leaves. I had no idea that the ficus or gomero could grow to such large sizes. Look at these roots and branches. A short subway ride took me to the Almagro district. This is a place away from the center and it's big tourism. The architecture of Buenos Aires is a mixture of old and new styles. To be honest, the older architecture has a lot of charm. This is a nursing home for seniors. Many of them probably remember the times when the entire city looked just like this. I found a basilica here that looked quite modest from the outside. However, it's famous for the way its interior was decorated. Look at that. This is a quite unusual church design. You can climb up the stairs behind and above the altar. The Recoleta Cemetery is an elite resting place for Argentinians who made great contributions to the country's history or simply paid exorbitant cemetery fees. I found the Duarte family tomb here, where the ashes of Eva Duarte Perón were placed. Another ficus spread its branches outside. This one is over 200 years old. Caminito is a district of Buenos Aires where immigrants from Europe, mainly from Italy, settled at the beginning of the 20th century. The city was unable to provide an immediate shelter from mass immigration, so a district of houses was created here where families lived in one room until they found a better solution. Today, it's a tourist attraction and a place for artists of all kinds. On the third day in Buenos Aires, I took a boat trip to the town of Tigre, in the delta of the Paraná River. It ends its run here after a long journey from the north, from Brazil and Paraguay. I'll show it to you later. As you can see, Buenos Aires is also an important commercial port. The water in the river is brown, however, this is its natural color because the bottom is clay. The river is healthy and full of fish. Delta is an interesting place where people live far from the big city. They have to go everywhere in their own boats. A car is not very useful here. This looked like a boat driving school. Most of the products are delivered to the piers next to the houses, and the children had to go to school by motorboat. There's even a system of water buses that stop to order. Water Uber hasn't been created yet, but it's probably only a matter of time. In the town of Tigre, I found a nice building that used to be a club for the Argentinian elite. Today, it's an art museum. This is a monument of Juan Domingo Perón, who served as a president of Argentina from 1946 to 1955, and then again in the 1970s. During his first term, Perón was supported by his wife, Eva Duarte Perón, Evita. They were immensely popular among the Argentinian working class. Perón's government invested heavily in public works. They've expanded the social welfare and forced employers to improve working conditions. Trade unions grew rapidly with his support, and women's voting rights were granted, thanks to Evita's influence. As with many politicians of that era, a lot of different opinions are surrounding them. I'm not going to discuss it here. You can find more information about the Peróns in the history books. Lezama Park is a place for a picnic for the family or a football game with the children. I found a Russian Orthodox church here. Unfortunately, you can't get inside without an appointment. Even if I went in, I wouldn't be allowed to take photos. That's the custom of this church, so we'll only see it from the outside. The Argentinian History Museum is another matter. The most valuable relics of the country's history, paintings, furniture, uniforms, and documents are collected here. In this glass vault, there is a saber of General José de San Martín, the national hero of Argentina. This is Plaza de Rego. On weekends, you can find a fair of artists and souvenir sellers here. And sometimes, out of nowhere, people start dancing tango.
Intenté olvidar todo entre los dos, pero no se tapa con las manos el sol.
After a 3.5-hour flight from Buenos Aires, I landed at the end of the world. The town of Ushuaia, in the province of Terra del Fuego, is a stunningly beautiful area where the Andes Mountains are just emerging from the earth. 3,000 kilometers to the north, in Chile and Peru, they reach the sky. Ushuaia is geared towards tourists. In the summer, for the easygoers like me, and in winter, for skiers and mountain climbers. There are many trails available for everyone. Ushuaia is also a commercial and naval port. I'll talk more about this later. Road number 3 leads to a place marked as the end of the world. All roads in South America end here. Before we get there, I wanted to show you some interesting places. The Beaver Park, Senda Castorera, was created in 1946. 25 pairs of beavers were brought here for breeding and production of fur. Unfortunately, it was a failed business plan. Unlike Alaska or Canada, the climate here is not very cold and therefore was not very useful. The business people left, but the beavers stayed, and they multiplied so much that they disturbed the ecological balance. We are very close to the border with Chile. The boundary line runs just beyond this pond. I didn't see any beavers, but I noticed a family of caracara birds in the distance. And this is a shelter on the Lake Roca. Just like at the place with the beavers, the border with Chile is just across the water. And we're finally here. There are no drivable roads beyond that sign. I'm at the end of the world. You can still take a boat to the island of Cape Horn from Ushuaia, and people with deep pockets can take a short flight to Antarctica nearby. It's only an hour and a half away in a straight line, but a trip like that costs $10,000. Well, my pockets are not that deep. I'm here in March, when the summer ends at Terra del Fuego. You can still see a lot of greenery here for now. 3 or 4 months, a layer of snow will cover this area in white powder. The next day, I found myself on board of a helicopter that took me on a flight to the mountain peaks. In July and August, the helicopter lands in the snow. March is the end of the summer in Ushuaia. There were 2 other passengers on board with me, and of course a pilot. We were treated to a glass of champagne. I just loved my champagne at Terra del Fuego. This is the airport in Ushuaia. At the end of the runway, there is a terminal for the commercial flights. The heliport is on the opposite side, closer to the military installations. After returning, I still had half a day to explore, and I decided to climb up to the Glacier Marcial. This is a car parking. From there, I had to go on foot. A trip like that is an all-day enterprise. We need to start early in the morning. I ran out of time and only made it as far as the snow line. The sun was setting, and it was time to go back. Even though I didn't reach the mouth of the glacier, my effort was rewarded with a beautiful view of the bay. I caught a bit of a cold in Ushuaia, so I stopped for a hot meal in the pink tea house next to the parking lot. The Torres Family Museum is dedicated to the Falkland Islands, or as the Argentinians call these islands, Islas Malvinas. For years, both countries considered these islands to be theirs, and the last armed conflict took place in 1982. I plan to visit the Falkland Islands in a few years, but for now it's very difficult. The COVID pandemic has reduced tourism there to almost zero. This is a monument of the Argentinian National Guard. I had a brief contact with them. I'll tell you about it later. Even in a town at the end of the world, Evita and Juan Perón have their monuments. This part of the city is focused on tourist services of all kinds. As in many places of this type, there are many hotels and souvenir shops for every taste. Take a look at the view far away at the end of the street. These mountains here are just the beginning, the baby teeth of the giants up north. I even found a casino here. It's not my favorite pastime, but there are people who are passionate about it. And this is a tourism center in Ushuaia. It offers all kinds of trips and cruises to visitors. Most of them are along the Beagle Channel, which constitutes a border between Argentina and Chile. I took one of these trips on my day 3 in Ushuaia. The nature of this area is raw and beautiful. The Ushuaia portal is kind of an entrance gate to the city. The same road number 3 that terminates at the end of the world in the south leads north to the Patagonian prairie. This is where the Andes begin, powerful and majestic mountains stretching for thousands of miles through Argentina, Chile, Peru, Ecuador, and up to Colombia. To see the true nature of this place, I decided to get my shoes muddy. This path led to a lake called Laguna Esmeralda, or Emerald Bay. A roughly 4-kilometer route ran first through the forest and then through the more rugged terrain. This is only a small part of this route. You can see it in its entirety in a separate video on my YouTube channel. And finally, Laguna Esmeralda. Was it worth walking through this mud? Of course. Would I do it again? Of course not, but I highly recommend it because the view at the end is breathtaking. The town of Tolhuin is about 100 kilometers from Ushuaia. There is not much going on here, and there is some kind of hippie settlement on the shore of Lake Fangano. I stopped for lunch at La Union Panaderia Bakery. This is a popular place for travelers in this area. This modern bakery produces its own pastries and bakes them on site. Mate tea lovers can fill a thermos with hot water and get one serving of tea for free. Tipping is expected, but not mandatory. I also found some interesting sculptures and historical figures of this place. A tasty lunch, empanadas, latte, and some pastries hit the spot after a cold day. The weather started to improve. I even caught a nice sunset when suddenly I was stopped by the National Guard. I didn't do anything wrong. It was just a routine roadside check. After a while, they let me go. Phew. The weather started to deteriorate. I had to go back to the hotel to wash my muddy shoes and jeans. The catamaran Ezekiel 3 took me on a cruise on the Beagle Canal. This comfortable ship offered both indoor and outdoor seating. The 4-hour cruise departed from the port of Ushuaia, stopped at the Bridges Island, and sailed on to see some birds, animals, and the southernmost lighthouse in Argentina. These mountains in the distance are on the Chilean side. The Bridges Island is a harsh and cold area. The animals and vegetations that are here have a tough life. We were allowed to go ashore, but we were not to take anything from here or leave anything behind. These are not penguins, but cormorants. They live on these rocks all year round. They don't migrate. For this reason, neighborly quarrels are a daily occurrence. Cormorants live next to these giant sea lions. The next day, I got on a plane and I flew to a slightly warmer place. This is Cordoba, a beautiful city with colonial architecture and a wonderful climate. This place is known as Plaza Colón, one of the most beautiful squares in Cordoba. The fountain, the statues, the columns, and the flower pots were a part of the Argentina pavilion at the World Expo in Paris in 1889. The square is surrounded by school buildings today. I found an old train station in Cordoba. It's still in use, but only 2 to 3 days a week, and only on a few routes. Decades ago, one of the presidents of Argentina decided that the railway was the thing of the past and that it needed to be reduced to a minimum. The station in Cordoba was built in the old style, made of beautiful tiles and wood. The Sarmiento Park is a place of relaxation for the residents of Cordoba. I started my tour at these stairs. They are made of ceramic and cement tiles. From the top, you can see the panorama of the city. These buildings are expensive apartments in the city center. The Ferris wheel is in the zoo, but we won't go there today. The city swimming pool was not in use in March. I suppose that in the summer, in November and December, there are crowds of people here. The bicentennial square is decorated with colorful circles. They symbolize events in the history of Cordoba. I guess the Nintendo's Sonic the Hedgehog would have a lot of fun here. These are the food trucks at the end of Diodoro Roca Avenue. This is a popular place for a meal for the park visitors. The most famous booth, described in guidebooks, is El Dante El Chiropan. I bought a sandwich there, but I was disappointed. About 200 kilometers east of Cordoba, there is a town called Miramar. In the 1920s and 1930s, it was a vacation spot for the Argentinian elite. Miramar is located on the shore of a salt lake, one of two such lakes in this area. Water flowing down from the mountains squeezes itself through the salt deposits. That creates a unique microclimate, the sea in the middle of the continent. You can even spot flamingos wading in the water here. The former clientele of this place stayed at this luxurious Grand Vienna hotel designed in the Art Deco style. The building is a ruin today. You can't even go inside for safety reasons. However, the grandeur of the hotel is still visible. You can still buy a ride on a boat or a pirate ship here, but it's not what it used to be. At first, the hotel was owned by the German aristocracy until the end of the World War II. Later, it passed into the hands of the hotel's employees, and it prospered quite well. Salt water from the lake breached its banks in 1971, destroying about 40% of the city. After the flood, Miramar lost its well-developed tourism. The hotel was never rebuilt and it's in deep state of decay today. These stones are a former Greek theater destroyed by the salt water. Cordoba is divided almost symmetrically by the Primero River. It's not a huge river, but it's still a barrier dividing the city. Part of the river is regulated, and it looks a bit like the water canals in Los Angeles. Here, the riverbanks are more natural. Many bridges were built over it. Some of them are modern, and some have the charm of a bygone era. I made a short trip across a few of these bridges. The water is clean and healthy. The city and its residents take good care not to turn it into a dirty sewer. Cordoba has a rich history, especially when it comes to religious architecture. Churches built in the 16th century still stand today. Many of them still have their original doors and hardware. On the top of the cathedral tower, there is an image of the original inhabitants of this area, an ethnic group called Come Chigon. Like many cities in Argentina, Cordoba also has the San Martin Square. And these letters placed in the triangle are a play on words. Amo means I love in Spanish. The letters CBA stand for Cordoba. I saw something similar in Buenos Aires. The city has a modern center with a shopping mall. This was a park near my hotel. Small European-style bakeries offer a selection of sweets for every taste. I stopped for coffee in one such place. Starbucks was leering at me with envy from the opposite corner. Not today, Starbucks, not today. Paseo de las Artes is a kind of street fair in Cordoba. This is similar to what I saw in Buenos Aires at Plaza Dorrego. On Saturdays and Sundays, artists bring their products here. The last stage of my trip was to a place in the north of Argentina, located on the border of three countries. Puerto Iguazu is a small town on the Argentinian-Brazilian border. It's actually a triple border, because on the other side of the Iguazu River, Paraguay is also visible. This spot is a tourist attraction appropriately called Tres Fronteras, or Three Borders. Recently, the Bridge of Unity, Puente de la Integración, was built here. It connects Brazil and Paraguay. People often cross that bridge to buy electronics in Paraguay. For some reason, the prices of the electronics are much lower in Paraguay than anywhere else around. We're not going to go there this time because I came here to see one of the wonders of the world, the Iguazu Falls. The waterfall is located on the border of Argentina and Brazil. It is at your fingertips, sometimes literally. In Argentina, visitors ride in this small train. The walkways on the Argentinian side are extensive and multi-level. These are coyote, predatory mammals, similar to lemurs. They have sharp teeth and claws. Many careless tourists have been scratched, even though there are signs everywhere warning, "Do not touch coyote." The climate in this area is hot, and beautiful insects have a comfortable life here. This butterfly is known, for obvious reason, as the 88. This caterpillar paraded on the railing without fear for its safety. With spikes like that, no one dared to touch it. Where there are insects, there are also spiders. Some of them look really scary. This is not dirt or dust. These are hundreds of mosquitoes and other insects buzzing around. Plenty of food for the spiders, am I right? Standing on the Brazilian side, I had a full panoramic view of the waterfall. You can spend all day on both sides and not see everything. Someday, this boulder will fall down with a great bang. These vapors in the air are a cloud hanging over the Garganta del Diablo, the Devil's Throat. This is the highlight of the program in Iguazu. We'll fly there soon. This time I got a seat next to the pilot. I had a great view of the waterfall. Let's go. Down the river, brave people who are not afraid of water can take a ride on a fast boat right up to the waterfall. I wasn't that brave. The river continues to the city of Puerto Iguazu and it joins the Parana River on the border with Paraguay. Then it flows all the way to Buenos Aires, where the Tigre Delta is. Remember? And finally, it was time to land. These buildings are the entrance to a waterfall park in Brazil. And that is an interesting park called Parque das Aves. The entrance to a waterfall in Brazil is very convenient. You have to buy an entrance ticket here and then take a bus to the waterfall, about 15 minutes from the entrance. I stopped for a meal first. I ordered something that looked like ribs, but it was a fried fish called tambaki. Very tasty. Garganta del Diablo was already nearby. This jetty below is a wet trip, so when I went there, I changed my photo equipment to the waterproof one. This park, next to the heliport, has an interesting collection of tropical birds. It opened in 1994. The red ibis welcomes visitors right at the entrance. I was hoping to see a toucan bird up close, but it didn't show up that day. Did I mention that Argentina is the land of flamingos? The Macao parrots amaze me with their colors. After returning to the Argentinian side, I visited the hummingbird garden. I have seen these birds a few times, but never in such numbers as here. Plaza San Martin is the place for meetings and festivals in Puerto Iguazu. I was here during Easter, as you can see. There is a bus station nearby. You can go on a cheap trip to both sides of the waterfall or buy souvenirs from the local merchants. And sometimes even meet Santa Claus? Did he come here for vacation too? I flew to Buenos Aires for one more day before returning home. Chicago is proud of the sculpture commonly known as the bean. In Buenos Aires, I found something similar, although on a much smaller scale, a dinosaur egg. It's located near the Corina Kavanagh building. This is yet another product of the Art Deco era with its heavy cement design. I found the Cathedral of the Holy Sacrament in the back, behind the building. Art Deco is not the prettiest style in architecture, but it was fashionable in the 1930s. Rapa Nui? What about Rapa Nui? Does this have anything to do with... Oh no, not that guy again.
Mr. Bombastic.
Rapa Nui in Argentina is a chain of ice cream parlors with delicious products. I even noticed one of them in Cordoba. In the nearby park, I also found another mausoleum dedicated to the Falkland War. And one more ficus. They're everywhere. On the last day, I went to see a show at the theater Tango Porteño. It is an over 90-minute performance, preceded by a delicious dinner. Take a look. Good night. I hope you like the land of ficus, tango, and flamingos. See you next time. In Buenos Aires, trucks with containers kept spoiling my shot. In Cordoba, a passenger on the bus let her hair down a little too much. Some people pay no attention to others at all. They will just stick their hands and butts in my shot.
Excuse me.
And this is a classic finger in the lens. In the town of Tigre, the bus didn't have soft suspension. The video turned out too shaky. On the Parana River, I attached a GoPro camera to a railing. Someone started pushing on it with her sweater, and then she waved her hands in front of the lens. And finally, she pushed it all the way down. How obnoxious. Here, the GoPro camera did not reverse the orientation. This is usually done automatically, but something didn't work here. The flag in Buenos Aires at Plaza de Mayo was nice, but the cellular antennas in the background spoiled the shot. Sometimes the camera didn't focus as I would expect it to. This sunset time-lapse was a flop because the reflections of the curtains and the tripod were visible in the glass. This man in the red shirt completely dominated the scene. And these are classic people entering the shot. Even though I had new microphones, there were still misfires. And these are a few language mistakes and a mosquito in Miramar. It offers all kinds of trips. The fountain, the statues, the columns, and the flower pots were a part of the Argentina pavilion at the world. Designed in the Art Deco style. The building is a ruin today, but you can even go. You can even spot flamingos wading in the water here. Ah! It's actually a triple border with the helicopter flying around. It's actually a triple border because on the other side of the Iguazu River, Paraguay is also visible. It connects Brazil and Paraguay. People often cross that bridge to buy electronics in Paraguay.